Okay, welcome and good day, everyone. My name is Dr. Mark Booker, and I'm the Vice Provost of Strategy at the University of Phoenix. I'm really delighted that you all could join us today on our panel about hard skills versus durable skills for professional growth. In today's labor market, the conversation on skills seems to be everywhere. And today, my conversation with our panelists will try to demystify some of the information around this out there that is in the labor market and help set a direction on what types of skills that you should focus on and why. Now, before we get into our discussion, I just want to do a couple of housekeeping notes. So first, I'm going to try to leave some time at the end of our session for questions. And the best way to ask questions is through our Q&A option in the webinar portal. I'll try to keep an eye out on these questions during our conversation and integrate any of these comments into our discussion that we have with our panelists. Also, you will see that we have the webinar chat open. What we'd like to ask you is to leave the webinar chat open for any comments or praise or just insights that you have during the session. So for questions, use Q&A. For comments, just use the webinar chat. So we'll try to manage things in that way. Also, if you submit a question in the Q&A and we aren't able to get to it during the time that we have and it matches the name that you registered with, we'll try to send you an email response on the back end of our discussion. So now let's get to the reason that you're all here today. It's my pleasure to introduce both Mina Nayak, the Director of Field Implementation from Jobs for the Future, also known as JFF, and Shannon Wilson, the Vice President of Information Technology from University of Phoenix. They are our esteemed panelists today. And one of the things is I have the benefit and pleasure of knowing both Mina and Shannon, and I've worked with both of you for quite a while. But our audience listening today doesn't really know you. You come from both very different backgrounds and different experiences. So I'd like to ask you to share just a few moments about yourself, your roles with your organization, and kind of why you're here. So I'm going to start with Mina, and then Mina hand it to Shannon for some introductions.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks, Mark, for having me and to the team here. Jobs for the Future and I we are really grateful to continue to have these conversations in shared spaces. So hey everyone, again, my name is Mina. I have been with Jobs for the Future, which is a national nonprofit. We sit at the intersection of education, workforce policy, and our real goal is a simple one. It's a hard one, but it's a simple one, which is how do we support economic mobility for more Americans? How do we support the creation of opportunity? Our North Star is one where it's, by 2033, 75 million people facing systemic barriers to advancement will be in quality jobs. And I come into this with a distinct focus on skill development. What does it look like to have a market, both in education and in employment, that allows for all of us to move between, through, and up through jobs based on what we know how to do, what we bring to the table. My background is actually out of higher education. And so I'm a strong proponent of the idea that there's a lot of transferability and knowledge that we learn in the classroom and things that we experience and test and play around with that we don't always know how to take into the workforce and to bring out into a place where people can see it. And so that's actually what drives my work across JFF now, 3.5 years after I've been here, working across our partners in education, our employers, our state partners, policy partners, and even innovation and technology and ed tech to just figure out what it looks like for us to be able to harness all of the great things that each of us has, but they don't show up around the core credentials and milestones that we achieve.
Thanks, Mina. Shannon?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mina. Well, I figured I would kind of go back a little bit, give a little bit of history of my background. Today is my 11,450th day at the University of Phoenix. And I was fresh out of college, securing my bachelor's degree. I was a first-generation college graduate, and I took the job here at University of Phoenix so I could go pursue a master's degree. And so my tenure spanned the last 31 plus years, and essentially the university, in my own personal eyes, has been roughly 8 different companies, if you will, or universities in some way, shape, or form. And that has spanned 7 different university presidents, 8 different CIOs, 13 different positions for myself, 12 of which have been in IT, and 6 different US presidents. And so I've seen everything from the privately held aspect of things to publicly traded. I've seen every economic cycle that you can imagine, from hyper growth all the way through more of a recession type of an environment. And I've been afforded the opportunity to work with every department here at the university and building everything from custom applications to implementing enterprise systems and platforms in every area of the university. My current role is Vice President of IT, and I'm responsible for the university's cloud hosting and technology infrastructure and all of our enterprise platforms like Salesforce or Anthology, Blackboard, etc. In addition, I'm responsible for the application engineering for our academics department, building all kinds of products and services that serve our students, faculty, and staff. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Shannon. And whenever anyone asks how long you've been at a university and who's counting, I guess you have the days to tell us. So thanks for that. So when we talk about skills, and they seem everywhere, they're discussed all the time, but not all skills are the same, and not a lot of people are aware of that. And one of the biggest distinctions that employers see when evaluating skills are the difference between what are known as durable skills and functional skills, or otherwise known as hard skills. So for both of you, what are the key differences between these type of skills, and how do they matter differently to you in your realms? I'm going to start with Mina on this question.
Yeah, and thanks for framing it in this way, because I think so for people who are not steeped in this all the time, there's debates about what we call different kinds of skills: technical skills, hard skills, competencies, which is its whole host of things on its own, as well as soft skills, employability skills, durable skills. I think power skills is an emerging trend right now, and all of these are ways that we're trying to codify what we can check for sort of attainment and achievements around versus the things we can't. So I can tell you I know how to do addition, and you can test me 2 + 2 is 4, 4 + 4 is 8, and you start to be able to check off, okay, this is concrete, I can see it, it's demonstrable, and we all agree on what it means. On the other side, though, there are these skills that are uniquely human, that are desperately needed for us to be successful in a socially driven world, which is where we work, it's where we learn, it's where we play, that are really hard to track. And those are things like communication, problem solving, critical thinking, resiliency, agility, and so on. And they're admittedly the most needed skills, right? We hear from employers all the time, especially at JFF, that higher education sometimes doesn't teach these things. Post-secondary is sometimes lacking in these areas, and they're needing those skills because it's not good enough for me to know how to do a concrete task. And the argument that I always throw out there when we're trying to figure out what these two skills categories are is that if it really was about me being able to show that I know how to complete something, that I know how to finish a task, that I know how to study and accomplish whatever is in my field of study. So my background's in neuroscience. I certainly wouldn't be in the field that I'm in right now. And if I was applying to a job that was directly aligned to my field, if it was only about these technical competencies, I should be able to apply with my diploma, because my diploma recognizes an achievement of certain these core skills. But that's not good enough. And that's interviews happen, conversations happen, because it is about these other uniquely human skills, these durable skills that are durable because they're able to survive these changes in the market. As our jobs change, as what we need to do day to day, they are the skills that are actually future-proofed. And they're future-proofed because they're able to have some resiliency in the market. I can move across fields. I can let technology evolve how I show up to work every day. But if I can't communicate, if I can't engage in some problem solving, if I don't know how to check my work, that creates its own host of challenges. The problem with this set of skills, though, and the reason it's the messiest category that we all talk around, is you can't measure them. What my communication definition looks like is going to be different than Shannon's, is going to be different than Mark's, is going to be different than everyone else we're looking for. And so if Mark and Shannon say, hey, Mina's a great communicator, to someone I work with right now, that person might actually come back and say unequivocally, Mina is not a good communicator, and here are the reasons why. It's hard to measure. It's hard to wrap a definition around. It's what we would call latent. So I'm showing you something that's making you try to figure out if I know how to do it, but it's not as concrete as 4 + 4 is 8 and 6 + 6 is 12. And so that's how these skills kind of come out and show up in the world, and how this conversation around durable skills has actually persisted the way that it has, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Mina, that's a really great point that you bring up, that they are latent skills and there's something that need to be, I think, evaluated on a consistent basis. Sometimes when I think of durable skills, sometimes you think about, like, if I was looking at a kind of the human exoskeleton, it's like durable skills are your spine, and it's something that's there, you need to work on, it's part of your background, and then functional skills and technical skills or hard skills are things you do with your hands and that you move, and but they're all part and they're all interconnected and they all need focus. And I think that in today's labor market, while they're hard to judge, it is something part of the evaluation of the character for people we're looking at. So I think you did a really wonderful job of kind of sharing that kind of breakdown, and the fact that durable skills aren't something that are static. They're just something that are consistent and continually needing to work on. Shannon's Shannon, any thoughts on that from your perspective?
Well, to me, the functional skills are more technical, measurable, and the softer skills are more behavioral and relational. And what I love about the softer skills is they transcend industries, which Mina referenced earlier. Like they transcend roles and industries, where more the hard skills, they're specific, like programming or data analyst, or you're a copywriter, etc. So to me, those are the big differences between the two. To me, the way I look at it as, I guess when you're hiring, the hard skills, the functional skills get you hired. Their durable skills get you promoted.
That's a great way of putting it. So staying on that line, Shannon, and I do want to dive into this because you come from an IT background, and there's no doubt a big emphasis on functional skills, how well you can code, how well you can program. That's vital. I don't think there's any question on that. But these roles still also require interaction with clients, stakeholders, and other people to deliver it on human-centered designs. And in fact, we can look at the hiring for the AI world. It's not all about programmers. It's about people that understand human interaction, human-centered designs, which more lean into durable skills. So how do you think a professional can balance the development of their technical or functional hard skills with these interpersonal durable skills? How would you recommend that to someone in your realm?
To me, you have to be intentional about splitting your professional development on the hard skills versus the more durable skills. And in our environment, there are so many opportunities for you to hone those skills and build those skills. And everything from, if you think about just generically in a typical day, the meetings that you have, your email communications, or whether you use like Slack or Teams, etc., how you communicate, giving project updates. There are so many opportunities, but you have to be very intentional about actually building those skills. And again, if you're in the technical world, and I speak a lot about emotional intelligence for technologists, and we talk about it here internally at the university a lot with our technical teams, because we're trying to build a different culture. And we remind them of all of the different ceremonies or typical things that you have in a typical day or sprint, that you have an opportunity to start to build and hone these skills. Everything from stand-ups. We do demos where we're doing product demos, where you can actually sit with a internal stakeholder and explain a technical concept, but do it in such a way that obviously that the non-technical stakeholder understands the message that you're trying to communicate. And that allows you to build influence. We have hackathons, and they give you opportunities to build teams on the fly that you normally wouldn't have access to, and go build a solution or attack an opportunity or a problem that you may be passionate about. It gives you the opportunity to lead. And everything from retros, and we do Tech Connects, but we also have several opportunities for mentoring. And we promote mentoring very heavily, especially over the last 24 months. Again, is another opportunity for you to build those skills. and mentoring goes in both directions. You can mentor or be the mentee. And so if you look at both sides of that opportunity, there are opportunities everywhere, but you do have to, I go back to what I said originally, which is you have to be intentional about building that durable skill set. And there are plenty of opportunities if you just open your eyes.
Thanks for that, Shannon. And I really love the talk about mentoring, because when we look at durable skills and the building of that, sometimes you have to have someone to show you how. That's not just based off of reading a book or kind of static information that you watch a video on. You actually need that kind of interplay to, whether it's to role play or have that experience to build some of those durable skills. And so we've talked a little bit about building durable skills at this point in that realm. But Mina, you had kind of discussed on one sense, durable skills are something that sometimes are hard to evaluate. And one of the things that University of Phoenix has tried to do is actually redesign all of its curriculum so that all of our courses lead to assessments into skills. And even on durable skills, and there may be a moment in time where we're assessing that durable skill, that's something that we've tried to do because we think that that proof or that assessment is something that's really important as people take things forward. I know that JFF has also done a lot to highlight the criticality of durable skills and the ability for employers to identify and validate these, but it's really hard to do unless you have some sort of assessment instrument like we're doing, and not everyone has that out there. So how do you see and hear from employers on how they're trying to assess or look at evidence and the strategies using to determine durable skill proficiency on applicants if assessments don't exist?
Yeah, and this is the real tension point of trying to move everything forward into a model that allows for more mobility based on skills, right? Like if skills is the language, and we're moving away from milestone achievements where it's not I have my high school diploma, my GED, or an associate's, but it's all these things that I know how to do as a result of. And the tension point is actually there's two parts, right? So there's the assessments don't exist, and then even if they did, even if we had a way to communicate that effectively at scale, the technology doesn't let me. I still have to write up a resume. I still have to apply to jobs. We're seeing a rapid increase, and I don't think it's actually I think it's necessary for the market to move this way where more and more people are using AI just to write their resumes direct to job descriptions. And so it's flooding the market as well for people who are trying to fill positions, which is creating its own challenge, but it's a reckoning that I think is needed because you can't figure this out. What are we really here trying to do? And so what we're seeing with employers in this liminal in-between space where they want to make these changes happen, right? They're noting, so there was a study that came out last year, National Association of Colleges and Employers, NACE, if you're familiar with them. 90% of employers are seeking graduates that can problem solve. 80% want teamwork. 70% are looking for communication and initiative and things like that. And then how do they track for them, right? And performance-based interviews, so tasks are becoming more and more common. There is a prove it mindset. There is we're going to invite you in, but somewhere along this journey, you're going to need to show us that you know how to do what you say you know how to do. And it's not, I think once upon a time, it really leaned heavily on technical assessments.
Mm-hmm.
One of my first jobs when I was working at a community college in higher ed, I was supposed to it was a student affairs position, planning events, marketing. They asked me to make a flyer. They asked me to do budgets. They asked me to do reimbursements because those were all technical skills of like, do you know how to do these things? Because if you don't, you're not going to succeed here. If I were to go back to that job now, I'm fairly confident that if they're still doing that, I'd have questions. My guess is that the assessment has probably shifted to be more of a, let's pretend we're in a room together or in a scenario together where we need to plan an event. How are you going to run this meeting? How are you going to brainstorm in real time what needs to happen? And so you're getting more of these behavioral interviews and performance tasks that are helping to sift through not just the fact that the assessments don't exist, but the reality that our definitions are not the same, right? Financial communication in a business setting looks really different than financial communication at my organization as a nonprofit. And so they're trying to bridge the gap by contextualizing it to what they need. They're also asking for more information. They want to have evidence of, they want to know can we put portfolios together that demonstrate what we know how to do? Now, I may not review it in that 2-second glance I have on a resume when it hits my desk, but when you have dedicated time in front of me in an interview, do you pull those examples out? Do you offer to show me something? And so those are the differentiators that are starting to really pull people ahead. And it's becoming more about what I can communicate in real time. And that's where employers are starting to lean in. Now, they would love it if we could help close the divide a little bit, and bridge into maybe some shared definitions where from at a certain point it specializes to their organization or their entity. The other thing we're seeing is they're taking students earlier in the education process.
Mm.
So they're hitting a sort of a mindset of, I have a talent shortage. It's getting harder and harder for me to actually find folks that are able to do the jobs I want. What if I do some early on ramps, be it earn and learn, work-based learning, internships, that kind of process? An individual I worked with some time ago, used to call it the idea of like the elevator versus the escalator versus the staircase. And so what if I end up on a journey where I'm on the escalator moving with them through this actual process? They're training me in real time on what it is they want me to know and demonstrate, so that they don't have to repackage me as I come into their organization. And we're seeing both of those things proliferate.
No, and I think you bring up some really, really salient points for our audience. So first is that the skills game is not static. You must always continue to keep building. The other part is I would bring up that you mentioned is keeping some evidence in regards to where your skills are and where you've been. I think that will set you apart, that evidence versus everything else, given the proliferation of AI and resumes. But the other area that you talked about too, which is really important, is that skills are viewed as a currency now. So when you talked about the idea of basically employers looking at different on-ramps for individuals to get careers, it's not just about your academic credential. It can be your academic credential and skills. So thinking about that as part of your story as someone on the job market, and a value that is different than others as in a monetary way as a currency, I think is a really fantastic set of insights for our audience. So Shannon, for you, just any thoughts on that question in regards to assessment, and what are you looking for when you're assessing people that are hiring in more of a technical IT role?
Yeah, just two additional comments. One, we hire by committee for roles, right? And you have to have those functional skills in order to get to an interview. And during the interview, our panel is normally representative of the product team that has the opening. So it has business users as well as technical users, and their job is to envision, if you add that resource to your team, do they fit? So we're hiring for fit. And a lot of that is, how are we exposed? What kind of communication do you expect from an applicant? And that's where they have the ability to demonstrate and shine and show their communication style. Will they be a collaborative team member, or will they be disruptive? Because you can't see that on the interview. So you've got the background and skills that gets you the interview. And it's those durable skills that you bring to the table in that interviewing process that then either pushes you up to the top or pushes you off the list of contention. To Mina's other point about interns, we have an internship program here at the University of Phoenix that has been gaining momentum for the past 5 years. Every summer, we bring on anywhere between 10 and 25 or so interns. And our mindset in that is to build a pipeline that we can hire the talent. You get to try before you buy, let them come in over the summer. You skill them up in the areas that are most important, the types of tools you like to use, how we communicate, et cetera. And then the cream rises to the top. Now, when we post every summer, and I'm a big fan of the internship program. So if you check me out on LinkedIn, you'll see that I post our internship program. When we post now, we get over 400 applicants every summer now for 10 positions. So it's become super popular. And the word on the street is, I'm an ASU graduate, and so I have ties to the computer science department at ASU. is they're coming back to me saying, like, everyone loves working for the University of Phoenix because what you're allowing these up and coming interns to have exposure to is the real world. And the real world is not just the functional. Those durable skills have to come to the table. And so they see that firsthand. And again, we're building our pipeline. We're very excited about that program, and some of our best and brightest have come through that program over the past few years, and we end up hiring a few of them every summer. So it's a very successful program.
Thanks, Shannon. And I can give you accolades for the internship program because I know our academic organization has benefited from several of the interns. The other thing I just want to highlight for our audience that you brought up is that to think about hiring and interviewing, you're not just having to impress one person anymore. You're having to impress a group of people. And that's where it's so important to think about those durable and interpersonal skills. So just wanted to highlight a couple of things you said. At this point, I just want to make a shout out to everyone who's in the chat, a few things. One is Tara Moss said, will this presentation be shared with participants on the back end? Yes, it will. It's being recorded as we speak, and so it'll be shared on the back end. So if you like what you're hearing and want to share it with other folk, feel free to do so. Also, if you do have questions, just putting a plug out, put them in the Q&A section of our chat. As we get towards the end of the session, if there's any questions, we'll go over them. So I want to shift gears just a little bit and look at, we've talked about assessment on skills, but I want to talk about identification of skills for individuals, because different roles do have kind of a different tension between how much you need to lean into durable versus how much you need to lean into functional or hard skills. They're both important, but some need different levels or variations of them. So in your opinion, and I'll start with Shannon, are there any tools, processes, or resources out there that you would recommend to help our participants with trying to identify what skills are most valuable for the roles or the professional jobs that they're interested in?
Yeah, so Mark, I guess at a very high level, if you just look at job postings in general, you can start to see a much greater quantity of these durable skills starting to make it into the job description. As you know, successful candidates will have these following criteria or skills, if you will. That's a really easy way to start to see and understand, like, what is that job really going to be? Is it going to be just a heads down application engineer, or does the person need to have strong collaboration skills and communication skills and leadership qualities? All those kinds of things, they're identified in those postings. In the past, it was heavily just the functional. And today, durable is everywhere. So it's gaining in momentum and importance. The other thing you can do inside of your own organizations or even in your professional networks is ask for feedback. If someone's in a role that you covet, ask them what their typical day is like, and where do they feel that what they bring to the table is a catalyst for growth and promotion, or is limiting for them. They'll share that with you, and that again is more, mentoring and being the mentee and all, and those types of scenarios. And then the other thing I would suggest is look inside of your own organization or even others and observe a top performer, a high achiever. Like what behaviors set them apart from everyone else? The competition is in the everyone else, right? Like what sets them apart, and observe that. Like, what is their communication style? What's their leadership style? What's their decision-making type of style or process? And then I hate to go negative, but you can also do the same thing with poor performers, right? Like you can look at them and you can identify a lot of those. And I would ask yourself, like we've all had challenging bosses in our history. What type of way did they work or communicate or lead that was very negative, so that you understand what not to do? Those examples are there for the taking as well.
So thanks, Shannon. I would just want to highlight two things you said. One is a huge word, which is a tool and a process, which is to ask. That word asking is actually demonstrating a durable skill of inquiry and critical thought. And it actually shows moxie of the participants. And so sometimes I think people that are hiring for a job don't want to feel like they're bothersome or, asking too much. And the reality is, please, by all means, and if you want to inquire, that inquiry helps determine fit for both parties, because the dance in hiring is not always just about you getting the job as the wanting to be hired. It's about fit between both parties. And so that was an awesome thing. And the idea of assessing other people is fantastic. But yes, Shannon, you were gonna say something.
I would say that ask is also like, not everyone wants to leave the organization they're in, but they're chasing growth opportunities. Ask, to your point, like you can ask leadership all around you, like, what skill sets do I bring to the table that make me a great candidate for this? Okay, now let's go the other side. Where can I grow and develop the most that makes me an even stronger candidate for this opportunity? But you have to be vulnerable, and you have to be humble, and you have to ask, where can I grow and improve that makes me a better fit?
Thanks. So Mina, from a JFF perspective and from where you sit, what are the best tools, processes, or resources out there for someone to identify the most valuable skills for whatever role they're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, I think Shannon, you started it off with look at the kinds of jobs and opportunities, look at the postings that are out there that look like roles you might want. Informational interviewing is huge. Very few people don't actually want to engage in that, because it comes actually right back to that same idea of it. You just ask. And people are generally interested in supporting or engaging in those processes. Um, and one thing was actually coming up for me, as you both were just discussing, like, just this morning, I had a conversation with, a manager of mine to say, I've run out of tools. I don't know how to handle this anymore. Can you help me? And we kind of brainstormed together. And those are very real examples that don't just have to be in the workplace, right? They happen in our day to day. The trick for us is to be able to actually identify those. There's a couple other things that I have seen emerging, and so when we look across some of the trends in practices that are happening across the board, not just with employers but with learners, with workers, we're seeing more and more of that, again, AI adoption. And what I would challenge everyone to do is to not use AI as a shortcut, but to use it as a sounding board. Right. So don't go to AI and say, I want to apply to this job. Here's my resume. What's lacking? Go to AI and say, this is a job I'm interested in. What are the skills you're seeing? Or find 5 jobs that look like this. What are the skills that are coming up? Pull from tools that exist already, and then come back and say, here's what I know how to do. What am I missing? Where is that not showing up? That's why we're seeing more and more, I think, AI assisted career navigation tools come out. And a lot of it comes back down to, oftentimes, and Shannon, I think you implied this in what you said, we don't know what we're good at or what we know how to do or our areas of growth. That is actually an example of social capital that folks who have been coached and supported in their entire lifelong learning journey, as well as into their careers, if they've been mentored, they implicitly have that. But if you don't have that, or you don't have access to it, or you don't have someone in your network who is in the types of roles that you are interested in pursuing, that's a huge gap. And it's not easy to fill. And so we're seeing more and more of those AI assisted career navigation, career development tools come out, because technology is actually filling the void. And then similarly, pursuing different kinds of learning opportunities to then actually expand what you know. Augmented reality, AR, VR, simulation learning. If you can't access an internship or actual learning in an office, can you find something that lets you practice something online? It's not a one-to-one, but it's certainly better than a zero-sum game where you have access to nothing. And so those are some of the things that are also coming out. And then one of the other big pieces that I will call out here is pursuing some of these unstructured learning opportunities that exist outside of education. So this includes things like engaging in community work, service-oriented work. There was a conference I was at last month, and they actually were looking at Gen Z and engaged in community service or community-based work. And they found that it actually had net return on investment when you got a job, because there are things that you learned in this really informal space that naturally made you more equipped for the roles you were in. It just wasn't our traditional model of I get education and I go to work. And so we sometimes discount that. And so the challenge being, elevate it, but also keep doing it. And then similarly, pursue some of those other short credentials that exist, be it Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, whatever you have access to. And oftentimes it's not about the credential. It's not, I went and got this prompt engineering credential from Coursera. It's I took Coursera courses and I was a self-directed learner and I earned these different milestones, which will tell an employer that you take initiative. You're willing to try new things. You're willing to engage in ongoing learning, which means, to the point we made at the top of the conversation, you're going to keep engaging in learning across these durable skills. So they send different kinds of signals that are not one-to-one. And they're all valuable. And you wrap that around what Shannon suggested about mentorship and asking and having those conversations, and you'll find yourself in a really good package of opportunity.
Thanks, Mina. Mina, one of the reasons I really love talking to you is you read my mind half the time. So we're actually going to get into a question on educational opportunities and how to expand education. But before we jump into that, I did want to just make a note on AI, because you talked about AI the second in AI assisted tools. And I think in the hiring realm, one of the things I want to just give our audience as feedback is AI can really, really help you do the research and understand the environment you're about to jump into, but use it to amplify your voice, not replace your voice. In the hiring world, and I know Shannon sees it, I know Mina sees it, I know I see it in academics, I'm looking for the real you, not the perfect you. And so in a lot of cases, when you're looking at your skills and how you're presenting yourself, all these tools can help you find where to go quicker, but make sure it's you behind it and the real you and the personal you, and use it to amplify your voice, not replace. So just a quick note on AI, probably needed to put that out there. There can be no session anywhere where we don't talk about AI, but that's our AI fill for the day. But going into your other point that you made, Mina, about educational development, what are some of the, and this is for both you and Shannon, what are some of the pathways or ways to look about how to educate and expand your skills? And I know we're on a webinar for a university, and I think that's a fantastic way. I could give you a dissertation on that. But when we're talking about skills and building a currency, it's 1,000 points of light. So there's a couple of ways to do that. So Shannon, I'll start with you, and then I'll hand it to Mina to fill it out on regards to educational opportunities.
Yeah, Mark, obviously, structured classes are without question a strong way to go. I think I mentioned it earlier. One of the things we do is the informal training that really is, those opportunities are present all day, every day in your typical scenarios. We utilize, we have a session here at the university called Tech Connect, where we invite technologists to come and they present and pitch a technical topic or concept. So they're working on communication skills, leadership skills, etc. So for us, if that was an area that you were deficit, like storytelling and communication, there's an opportunity for you to now package up something you're very passionate about and go practice. Real life, like go tell the story, influence your peers, become a leader across technology, because now you're communicating a technical concept and others may come to you and ask you questions. And maybe it's just a new tool that you've picked up, that you've learned something. You're like, oh my goodness, I learned this new tool, and all of a sudden it shaved 5 hours a week off of my workload. And you bring that to the table. Think about the power and influence that you now have, like in our scenario, across an audience of 400. Now you've started to rise in the ranks of leadership, management, if you will, influence, collaboration, all those opportunities. We do things like demos. Again, it is another opportunity for you to work on those softer skills and to build that in a real life, experience where you're having influence. And you can do it informally as well. And Mark, you and I do this all the time. We meet together behind closed doors and we bounce thoughts, ideas, strategies, and plans across each other. And it's not always about things we're working on together. Many times it's about things that I'm facing individually, or Mark, like in our example, you're facing individually, and you want another voice of reason that you can actually talk to and talk about your strategies. And here's what I would do differently, or, here's, will this work? And they're just, in a typical business environment, there are just an endless amount of opportunities. I would say, I would just encourage everyone, take advantage of the informal learnings and trainings and experiences that you can gain in just your typical day-to-day experience.
Thanks, Shannon. Mina, thoughts on that?
I mean, I would double down on all of that. One of my sort of origin stories and where I've come to now is, I think this is now 4 supervisors ago. I had applied to a job at the university that I worked at. It was an internal move, and I was by no means the most aligned candidate. And I ended up getting the job, and about 6 to 9 months into it, I was having a conversation with my then supervisor, and he actually admitted to me that he didn't hire me. He didn't take a risk on me because I interviewed really well or because I was already in the institution or had relationships or whatever that he thought he could build around. I had on my resume included my community work, some of my side gigs and activities that I have, things that I've done for myself that are just they're not remunerated. I don't get paid for them. They're just part of my personal identity and story and things that I do. And his thought was, if she is doing all of this for no money, what would she do if I paid her? And that was his I'm taking a risk on you decision maker. And so when it comes to thinking about how to build our education opportunities around us and to grow this, it's breaking out of the mile, like this framework we have of in the classroom or structured learning, and really thinking about everything as an opportunity to test, to try, to fail, to explore different opportunities. And some of those look like certificates, these online courses, and things like that. Some of it is about reflecting and taking stock of the fact that you have made it as far in life as you have. And there are things that it took for you to get there. And how do you translate that? It's translation. A lot of times we have a lot of these skills. We may not always be adept at them. They may be areas of growth, but we probably have something, and being able to translate them across these lines is key. I'm not practicing science in any shape or form, realistically, lab science. I am not a neuroscientist. Did I finish my degree in it? Yes. But you know what it taught me? Because our bodies work across nerves and systems. I think in systems. I think about how one thing depends and connects to another. That's a transferable skill. And it's not a technical one. And so these are the types of, if you can focus on that kind of thing, engaging in conversations, being able to get online and as Shannon said, learn that new tool, think about what it looks like to break away from the expectation that education is going to prepare us for work, and look at it more as education is one of the tools in my pocket to get me ready for work.
No, that's awesome. And I think just the sentiment that the opportunity for education is everywhere, use it. And then the other part that you brought up, Mina, document it. So I think as we're looking at our story, again, I as a hiring person, and what I've heard from a lot of colleagues in business and in education, document and tell your story, and that will help me decide who is the best fit for roles. So this has been a fantastic conversation thus far. We did have a question come in from Stacy Miller, so I'll throw it out to either Shannon or Mina. It says that her hiring team has added soft skills along with previous problem solving activities. What are the do's and don'ts to emphasize with durable/soft skills?
For us, again, we're hiring for fit. So we're going to ask situational type questions to see how that person may respond. And the goal of that obviously is to understand, dig a little bit deeper. I mean, we know they got the technical skills to do it, but the people skills, the softer skills, those durable skills, how does that show up? As far as the do's or don'ts, it is tough because these durable skills, to Mina's point, are not measurable. But when you're sitting in an interview scenario, you know it when you hear it. Or the opposite, like, ooh, that type of mindset or way of working would be very disruptive for our team, or the type of customer, like I call them customers, our internal customers. They're all cut from a different cloth. They have different styles of resources that work really well with them, or that are more of a conflict oriented type of relationship. And so we obviously try to put the right resources in these right different scenarios. But as far as the do's and don'ts, again, you would have had to, as an applicant, done your research on the role that you're applying for and what the employer has shared as like what the core skill sets are that are required for that role. And you need to come to the table willing to demonstrate those softer skills that are represented in that job posting. They're not going to just be technical anymore. They're going to cover both sides of it. All of the great employers today are actually, these durable skills, you're going to find them in the top 10 things that they're looking for. They're occupying a big chunk of those top 10 skills. And more the functional is kind of like, if you don't have that, we don't want to talk to you. But if you have it, these are all these durable skills that really will allow you to be successful for us. You need to come to the table and demonstrate those durable skills.
And I think the only thing that I would add is, and this is, I kind of alluded to it at the top of the call of this messy world between like what is a skill and what is a competency. And without getting too in the weeds of that, I think one of the challenges we have is when we add things like problem solving or critical thinking or teamwork is they're keywords. And they mean so many different things, and how it shows up in a job can be very, very different, right? So what teamwork looks like for me right now at work might be collaboration and being able to convene groups. But if I was an athlete, it's very different. And it's about being able to connect, being able to have a game plan where we're all on the same page. And so there's a different type of performance that comes out with that. And so this is one of those instances where if it's not in a job posting, but internally, have you had the conversations about when we say problem solving, what does that look like? Is it problem solving through rapidly changing tasks and priorities? Is it problem solving across units and partners who have differing points of views? And what that will do is it starts to clarify away from a keyword. And as you start clarifying away from a keyword into a key demonstration, you can then ask questions about it. And everyone is starting to work from, even if it's implicit, the same definition. Because again, decontextualized, it just doesn't mean anything. Problem solve, and again, back to my 2+2 example, problem solving for math is very different than doing a messy problem solving, mediating across teams. And so being able to add that layer somewhere in the process is absolutely a necessity, particularly if you want to be in a position of doing this effectively.
Thanks for that, Nina. And thanks for the question, Stacy. So in looking at the clock, we are actually a little over time because as such great conversations are, we kind of just continue to move forward. So I know we've held a few people over, but I'm just going to give the opportunity for both of our panelists one last chance to say any words of advice or closing thoughts that they have to everyone that's out there. So I'll start with Mina. Any last thoughts before we close today? And then Shannon.
Use your tools. So your tool, and use your tools and your networks and your resources. Talk to people, ask questions, get online, try out different kinds of technology as it's emerging, but use it to better yourself, not to shortcut the process. So, and I'm looking in the question box of how do I translate and learn how to translate. Use a tool, use AI, go in, ask a question. This is what I know how to do. I don't know how to translate it. And it will help you start to build the vocabulary and a thought process that you can then replicate on your own.
Thanks so much, Mina. And then Shannon, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything that hasn't been covered already. In my technical teams, I call them the 3 Res, and they really center around these functional skills and these durable skills. I call them results, relationships, and respect, right? Your job is to deliver results. And nothing else works if you don't do that. But relationships and respects are more those durable skills, right? It's how you communicate, how you dig deep to understand who you're working with. It is showing up and demonstrating that you respect people's time and that you respect their contributions and how you show up. All those kinds of things that really emphasize how important those softer skills are, those durable skills are critical. I guess that would be the only thing I would add that's different outside of, we've covered a lot already. I think we've covered the gamut so far anyway.
Yeah, no, it's been an awesome 50 minutes. And so first for Widener and Lori, I know you submitted some questions and some items. We'll get back to you post this meeting. But beyond that, I just would like to ask everyone to give both Shannon and Mina a virtual round of applause for this session and the great work that they do. And you can see why I feel like I'm so lucky and fortunate to work with both of them. And then I think we put some news up in regards to a future University of Phoenix webinar. But I truly want to thank you for spending, about an hour of your day with us and joining us for this great conversation that I hope you gained a lot of insight out of. Appreciate you and have a wonderful rest of the week.